All right, let's get started. Welcome to the EasyBuild and EESSI UK workshop. So this is sort of a repeat of an EasyBuild tutorial we've done at ISC a couple of times, a little bit more extensive than that. And especially tomorrow, second half of the day tomorrow, we'll also introduce you to the EasyBuild project, which is sort of an extension to EasyBuild. It sort of grew from the EasyBuild community. The agenda here is on this tutorial website. I hope everybody has found that website already or on there, or you can find your way there. So today we'll mostly look at EasyBuild, do an introduction really from scratch on EasyBuild, no prior knowledge assumed. And we'll go through quite a lot of stuff. And as long as time allows, we'll also do hands-on. So we'll actually let you install EasyBuild, configure EasyBuild, do installations. We'll give you a broken EasyConfig file that you have to fix, and we'll work through all of that together. And both York and Jasper in the back can help you out. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. They will be running around and helping, and so will I, at least if I'm not presenting something. Tomorrow, just running ahead a little bit already, we'll look at more advanced topics on EasyBuild, and this has a timetable, but I can actually let you pick what you want to see first, or what you want to see more in depth. And if we have time in the whole morning, we can go through all of these things, if that makes sense. And then the afternoon, we'll take a look at the Easy project, what that is all about, how it works. Also do hands-on stuff there. It's going to be a little bit more limited, but I think it will give you a good idea of what the project is about and how it can be interesting. So for today, and this is important for the hands-on, we'll get started with the practical information. I also have slides, so I'll be jumping between the workshop website, the slides, and a terminal session right here. So this will be jumping between these windows all the time. The slides are linked also here. So on the tutorial website, you'll find the slides section, and the here link is the PDF of that. For now, it only has the slides for today. Tomorrow we'll update that presentation so it has everything for the 2 days combined. Okay, so the slides look like this. This has the link to both the website where you could register and the tutorial web page. The agenda, yeah. Okay, yeah, so Alan will be approving the accounts that he sees coming in. Yeah, he will look into that. Yeah, tutorial website, I've mentioned this. You also see the EasyBuild Slack here mentioned. For today, that will not be really relevant because we will be running around and answering your questions. But afterwards, if you want to go through the tutorial again, if you need any help, if you have any questions, the EasyBuild Slack is a very good place to ask for help. So we have about 800 people in there or 700 people in there. There's almost always somebody around that can answer your questions. For the prepared environment, like I mentioned, you can request an account. Most people have already done that. Most people have their account approved. If not, that will be done very soon by Alan, who's helping out remotely. The accounts will only be valid for today. So after the session or after the tutorial, so tomorrow evening, we will basically throw away that whole virtual Slurm cluster. So if you're leaving something behind there that you want to keep, copy it over before the end of the day tomorrow. And don't forget your password. That will help us, so we don't need to lose time with that. There's a reset password link, but it probably doesn't work. So if you need any help with there, let us know, and then we'll check with Alan how that can be fixed. The system you get access to is a Rocky 8 cluster, so it has Rocky 8 as an operating system. It's a particular Intel CPU, I forgot which one, maybe Haswell or Skylake, but that doesn't really matter too much. There's 2 ways to access it. The first way is through a browser. So let me show you what that looks like. So you can go to EUM23. And here, this is a bad example because that's not what you'll be seeing from the start. So let me do that again. I guess I need to log out. Like this, so you can log in with your username and password. And then you will get a form like this, where you can start a session. You can pick a number of cores, up to 4 maximum, I think. Yeah. So memory, some time as well. So if you don't request more time, your session will be killed after the 1 hour default that is there. And if you do start, you can start your session. Here I would just go for a terminal session. So there's no need for Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab or anything fancy like this. If you hit start, you'll get your session straight away. Now there's one important limitation. We only have 4 nodes in this cluster, which each have 4 cores. So if 4 people start a 4-core session, the whole system is full. So we won't be doing that. That's good as a backup, or if you want to play around on a worker node yourself, you can do that. So let me start a terminal session just to show you what that looks like. It will drop you on one of the nodes, and here you'll have 4 cores available to do some test installations. I'll log out of this again because the recommended way, so that frees up the node again. The recommended way is actually working via SSH. So you log in with SSH from a regular terminal session. You can use your password for that. In my case here, I've already put an SSH key there, and this will drop you on the login node. This is a better option because here we have 16 cores. That's a bit beefier node, more memory. We'll be sharing this with everyone who's playing around, but we won't be doing very heavy builds anyway. So that's probably the better approach. And there's also no time limit here. Maybe if you want to, you can start a screen session. So you can very easily get back if the Wi-Fi goes down or whatever happens, that you don't have to restart from scratch. So that's what I will do here. I'll start a screen session, and I can easily get back to this. What else? Also from the login node, you can start Slurm interactive job if you want to. But again, we have those limitations of number of cores and number of nodes available. So it's actually not really recommended to do that. Any questions on this before we continue? Alan also reminded me here. Yeah, so SSH is the recommended option because the login node is a bit beefier. And there is an oversubscription on the nodes also. So we actually have 4 nodes, 4 cores, that's 16, but with a 4x oversubscription. So we can actually start until 64 cores. That will slow things down again. So login node is probably the better option here. If there's any problems with this, if you're doing the hands-on, just raise your hand and we can try and help you out. Okay. Then let's get started. Maybe a short raise of hands. Who knows already what EasyBuild is? Who has played with EasyBuild before? Hands on. A little bit. Who has not played with EasyBuild at all? Okay. Who has written their own EasyConfig file from scratch? 2 people? Okay, yeah, that's actually good. So this is a very basic tutorial. We'll start from 0. And I'm sure even the more experienced people like Jasper and Jorg in the back, you may still learn something as well. Good. I'll start with the slides. I may flip to the tutorial website. I'll mostly do that in the later parts of the tutorial. So we have pretty good slides in the beginning, lots of text on the tutorial website. I won't be reading out the text. So that's why I prefer using the slide. But as we get more hands-on, I'll probably more focus on the tutorial website where you can easily copy paste commands or Python code snippets and so on. So what is EasyBuild? EasyBuild is a software build and installation framework. So a tool for building, compiling, and installing software. There's a very strong focus on scientific software and HPC clusters, which means it really only works well on Linux systems. If you have a Mac, you can play around with EasyBuild on a Mac, but if you try to build something, you won't get very far because it's not prepared for that. We don't really have very good support there. It's open source, GPL version 2 license. It supports running on top of both Python 2.7 and any Python 3 version that's newer than 3.5 currently. That will change relatively soon. So we hope by the end of the year, we'll release EasyBuild 5. which will be Python 3 only, and you'll need Python 3.6 or more recent for that. So if you get started with EasyBuild today, please already do that, and we'll explain how you can make sure you're using Python 3.6 or newer already. Very brief history. I think there's a bit more detail in the tutorial website. EasyBuild was started at the HPC team at Ghent University in Belgium in 2008, because there was basically nothing like it back then, and there were really no tools or no community efforts to make the installation of scientific software easier. So we were crazy enough to start from something like this from scratch. Initially, it was only in-house. We released it publicly in 2012. And the first 1.0 release was at Supercomputing 2012. And that's when it really started booming. Community started growing around it, which we didn't really expect, but I guess we were the first ones who really started a project like this. And many people had a need for it. So that's, in a nutshell, how EasyBuild came to be. There's lots of links here, the website, or documentation, our GitHub organization where all the development happens. We have a very active Slack channel where you can easily get help or get answers to your questions. And we have a Twitter and also a Mastodon account where we share some news every now and then. So in a nutshell, EasyBuild is a tool to help you build a scientific software stack in a consistent way, and with a lot of attention to the performance of those installations. You can see it really as a uniform interface for installing your scientific software on an HPC system. So no matter which software package you're installing or how that software package should be installed, you're basically talking to EasyBuild, and EasyBuild knows what to do. So whether it's something that uses CMake or something Python or something horribly complex, you're basically running the same type of commands, and EasyBuild knows what to do. It's automating that whole procedure for you, even starting from downloading the sources, unpacking the sources, jumping in there and running the right commands. It's doing all of that for you, including also generating the module file, the environment module file that you can use to then also start using the software. It does checking on itself along the way as well to make sure it's what it gives you is actually a working installation. So before EasyBuild was there, people were doing this manually. So they were just hiring people to unpack doorbells and run make commands, because nobody was crazy enough to try automating this. Next to user support teams, it can also help scientific researchers themselves. So it's actually easy enough that we have, certainly in Ghent and also on other sites, we hear this, researchers are figuring out themselves how to install the missing parts using EasyBuild on top of what's provided centrally. So they just add their own library or their own Python tool or whatever it's written in. They have their own small set of modules, and they can self-manage that if they want to. It has also become a platform for collaborating with other HPC sites. That started quite early after we did the public release. We had big sites like Jülich, like CSCS picking up on the tool and also actively helping us out with the development of it. So in that sense, it's like an expert system for installing scientific software. There's lots of tricks in there, lots of fixes, lots of configurations that make the installations a lot better. Now, some of the key features, it helps you to autonomously install scientific software, so to automate the whole installation procedure, including installing all the dependencies first, generating the module files so you can access those installations later, and so on. You don't need any admin rights at all for running EasyBuild. That's a key thing. That's also why it enables you, enables researchers to install their software in their own account. All you really need is write permissions to the directory where the software will be installed. That's all you need. So you can do it in your home directory on your account. That works absolutely fine. There's lots of configuration options. We'll see some of those. Some are very important. Others are really niche features or very specific things that you probably don't care about. I think we have over 250 configuration options currently in EasyBuild. So what we try to do is we try not to hard code stuff that people may want to change. So as soon as somebody says, it does this and I cannot change it, we'll add a configuration option to enable, disable it, or to control the name of the directory that it uses or whatever. So that's why there's lots of configuration options. It's also very easy to extend. So what EasyBuild comes with in terms of support for software, you can easily add to that without it being part of EasyBuild itself. So it has a plugin system. When we look at EasyConfig files, and we will explain in detail what those are, those don't have to be a part of EasyBuild itself to do installations with. So they can basically come from all around, and there's ways to include additional Python modules into EasyBuild and let it use those as well. We'll see how that works. You can customize it as well by using hooks. So you can write small pieces of Python code that change something that EasyBuild does by default, by doing something extra, by disabling something on the fly. That does require you know a bit of the insides of EasyBuild, so what kind of Python variables or Python functions you can call. But there's good examples of that, and the code is all open source. You can figure it out yourself if you want to make the effort. It logs everything it does. So for every installation, you will have a detailed log of which commands were run, in which directory, in what type of environment, what the output of those commands was, and so on. So even though an installation fully worked, maybe at some point the researcher says, oh, for this particular use case, it's behaving weirdly or not working at all. And then you can go back to the log and see, was that feature actually enabled or was that flag set? So even months later, you can still figure out what happened. At some point, we had feedback that EasyBuild was a bit of a black box, so you couldn't really know what was going on without actually doing it. And today, that's very different. So you can ask EasyBuild to give you more details while it's running and what it's doing. So you can go ahead and check while that make command is running for hours. Is it actually still going? Where is it running? What's the output of that? So you can see that while it's going on. And you can also do a dry run, and we'll see this in the hands-on as well, where in a matter of seconds, EasyBuild can give you a sort of report of all the commands that would be running when you perform an installation. So ahead of time, you can see, is the configuration going to be okay when I actually perform this installation? Has support for custom module naming schemes, so you have full control of how the module tree is organized. EasyBuild supports hierarchical module naming schemes as well, and we'll explain what that is in the tutorial, how that works, and how it can be helpful. It integrates with other tools, especially LMOD, so a modules tool is a hard requirement for EasyBuild. And we have very good support for LMOD. It has some integration with container tools like Singularity and Obtainer, so EasyBuild can create a container recipe that uses EasyBuild again to install software in a container image. It has integration with Slurm, so if you're building a big software stack that includes lots of dependencies, you can tell EasyBuild to submit those installations as jobs, individual jobs per installation. And EasyBuild will set dependencies between the jobs to make sure they are done in the right order. So you can actually do 1,000 installations with a single EB command on a Friday afternoon, and you let the jobs run on the cluster, and Monday morning you have your software installed. That's a very nice feature. There's a worldwide community, which is very helpful and very active, mainly through the Slack channel. We've been doing very frequent releases of stable EasyBuild versions, which have been well tested for over a decade now. It says every 6 to 8 weeks. That has slowed down a little bit, but every, let's say, 2 months, we do have a stable release. So there's a regular development cycle there. We have become very serious about testing. Whenever we make a change in EasyBuild, that's usually covered by unit tests. So that particular feature or that particular bug fix has a test that goes along with it to make sure that the whole tool stays stable. When we get contributions for new EasyConfig files, so new versions of software or new software packages that are installed, that are supported, we test those contributions first before we include them in EasyBuild. And we'll also do this in the hands-on, so you know how that works. And for every EasyBuild release, we also do regression testing. So whenever we say now's the time to push out a new EasyBuild release, we rebuild a big part of everything that EasyBuild supports to make sure that it all works. So that often boils down to 10,000 installations that we do on a cluster before we actually push out that release. So we want to make sure we don't break something that worked before. And this ties in with the Slurm support. It's really a single command that we just submit all those 10,000 jobs. And usually overnight, if there's enough free nodes on the cluster, we get the answer more or less the day after. Support channels, Slack I already mentioned. We still have a mailing list as well. The activity there is going down. Slack is taking over in some sense. but it is still there. You can still use it. And we also have EasyBuild conf calls every 2 weeks. We do a 1-hour conf call where we give updates on recent developments, what's going on currently, what are we working on. And we then usually also open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions, however basic they are, you can also do it in a Zoom call every other week. We also have yearly user meetings since a couple of years. We had one this week, Monday through Wednesday. There was an EasyBuild user meeting in the room next door here, where we hear international people giving a talk on how they are using EasyBuild, or how they're combining it with other tools, how they're using it in their environment. And then also some side talks that are not directly related to EasyBuild, but very relevant for the community. And all of these presentations are also recorded and saved on our YouTube channel. So you can go back to those later if they're interesting. What do we focus on in EasyBuild? 3 main things. Performance. So whenever we can, we strongly prefer to build the software from source. The main reason for that is that we're focusing on HPC systems, supercomputers. And it's very important that you optimize those installations for the CPUs on which the software will be run. So that can have a pretty big impact on the performance of that software. So what EasyBuild does by default, unless you tell it something else, it will go ahead and optimize the installation for the CPU on which it's being built. If you're building on a Haswell node, you'll get an installation that's optimized for a Haswell node. If you don't like that, you can change it. Like I said, many configuration options, but that's what it does by default. Reproducibility, so that comes back to the testing. We want to make sure that if you did an installation before, you can do it again later in the same way. This is a bit of an uphill battle. It's not very easy to ensure this. There's lots of installation procedures that involve downloading stuff from the web. And then if those things disappear online, there's not much that EasyBuild can do about that. To the extent that that's possible, we try to bypass that and make it not download stuff, or pre-download stuff and cache that, so it doesn't have to download it again. But there's many places there where we can definitely improve things a bit. Whenever possible, EasyBuild tries to control things as much as makes sense. We install our own compiler, so that's typically the first thing you do when you start using EasyBuild. You build your own version of GCC, and then start building stuff with that compiler. MPI libraries, BLAS libraries, everything that you need to get the software to work, we try and install with EasyBuild. We also use fixed versions for basically everything. We use a particular version of GCC, particular version of libraries, particular version of Python, and whatever dependencies you need, just to make sure that it works, right? If it works for me, it's probably going to work for you as well, unless we overlooked something. And it's really a community effort. That was not the case in the early years of EasyBuild when it was an in-house tool. But since it's been released publicly, it's picked up by hundreds of HPC sites around the world. And people are working together. We get lots of pull requests, lots of contributions. I will show some of that as well in the advanced EasyBuild part tomorrow. Just to be clear, what EasyBuild is not, that's sometimes helpful to clarify the picture a bit. So EasyBuild is not a replacement for tools like CMake or pip or make. It basically wraps around those. So whenever you would manually install something with pip install, EasyBuild just does that for you. And you're just asking EasyBuild to install the tool, and it knows what to do. So it's automating those installation procedures, not really replacing those tools at all. It also doesn't replace the traditional package manager you have in your operating system, like Yum or DNF. We focus very hard on scientific software, and very often scientific software is not packaged at all in the OS. So it's like an add-on to that. And in many cases, we also still rely on software that can be most easily provided through a package manager. OpenSSL is an important one because we want to keep security updates there. So usually we don't install that from source with EasyBuild. We require that it's there in the OS. And there's other cases like this as well. GPU drivers are another example. Also Slurm, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to install Slurm with EasyBuild. We just assume it's there and you can talk to it. Unfortunately, it's also not a magic solution to all your, certainly not all your problems, not even all your software installation problems. You will still occasionally run into issues. We'll actually see some of that today as well in the hands-on deliberately. So we'll give you something that's broken and we'll work together through fixing it. Especially if you're experimenting with new software versions, especially when you're experimenting with new software packages that are not supported yet in EasyBuild, you will often have to go through compiler errors or things that go wrong and figure out how to fix them. Now, if it's something that's included with EasyBuild already, it should work since it's been well tested. But even there's no strong guarantees. There may be something different about your system setup, like your /temp directory that's very small, or that is mounted with specific options that have an effect on the build procedure as well. The amount of memory you have available, for example, could also be a factor. So there's no strong guarantees, but we do what we can to try and make that work as well as possible. Okay. Any questions on this before we continue? No? All right, then let's go ahead. EasyBuild terminology is the next part. So we have lots of terms that we use in the EasyBuild community and EasyBuild documentation that are important to understand and to discriminate. Easy blocks, easy configs, I've already mentioned some of these. So we'll go through them one by one and explain what they mean. And also some overloaded terms. Modules is a very common example. There's Python modules, there's environment modules, there's kernel modules, there's Perl modules. So if you just say modules, you have to be careful in which context that you're using this. Usually we try to specify, be a bit more specific, Python module or environment module. But yeah, if we don't, then maybe you need to take the context into account. Extensions, tool chains, these mean specific things in an EasyBuild context, and we'll clarify that as well. So let's go through these one by one. To start with is the EasyBuild framework. So this is let's say the heart of EasyBuild, the core, all the functionality that we provide that you need when installing software from source. If you look at the code, it's a collection of Python modules, so a bunch of Python code that provides functions and Python classes that you can use. It's organized in Python packages, so it has a pretty good structure. And we had a really good talk actually at the EasyBuild user meeting this week. This was sort of missing in the documentation. So let me show you a very high level overview. So this was actually just added to the documentation yesterday. This is a graph of all the Python modules we have in EasyBuild and how they connect to each other, how they talk to each other. So this is pretty big. This is the result of 15 years of work, essentially. So there's lots of code in here. This is quite complex. But in the documentation, it gives you a breakdown of how this thing is organized, what talks to what, and what the main workflow is when you install the scientific software package with EasyBuild. I won't go through this here. That's a bit too much detail. But if you want to learn more about how things are organized and structured, you can also find this in the EasyBuild documentation. Yeah, most of it is a bit too detailed. So what does this support? It's all general stuff like unpacking a tarball, applying a patch file, running a shell command and checking the exit code, collecting the output of that command, and so on. So all this general functionality is supported in the EasyBuild framework. Also, code for generating environment module files in either Lua syntax or Tcl syntax. The framework knows how to do that. The framework also provides the EB command. So the EB command is really a very small shell script that just knows how to run the main function of EasyBuild, which is written in Python. But you can also talk to EasyBuild as a Python library. So you can do an import EasyBuild and then start using it in Python code as well. And we'll see this very shortly tomorrow in the advanced part of the tutorial. The GitHub repository of framework is in our EasyBuilders GitHub organization. So if you want to check the code or what we're currently developing, pull requests, issues, all of that is organized in there. Then the next term is an easy block. So initially, we didn't really have this concept in the early days of EasyBuild. What we introduced this to make the discussion about EasyBuild when people work together on the tool a bit easier. So an EasyBlock corresponds to a single Python module, a single Python script that knows how to perform a specific installation procedure. And this is a plugin to the EasyBuild framework. So it connects, it loads stuff from the EasyBuild framework, and then basically fills in the blanks to complete a full installation procedure. An EasyBlock can be generic. So we have an EasyBlock to do an installation with CMake, make, and make install. That's the CMake make EasyBlock. We have a separate EasyBlock for installing Python packages. So that's all separate Python scripts, essentially, separate Python modules that talk to framework and make stuff happen. There's generic ones. There's also software-specific ones, which are very, very specific to a particular software package. And usually that's the more complex ones. Like if you've ever built OpenFOAM manually, you know it's very complex, and it's not something standard like CMake, make, install. It has way more specific tools and commands that you need to run and things you need to be aware of. And that's all captured in a single Python module as well. Same for TensorFlow, same for Dwarf, same for some of these. PyTorch is another example where we do complex things and specific ways of testing the installation. I think currently we have about 200 software-specific EasyBlocks in EasyBuild, and about 35, I think, or maybe I'm mixing up those. No, I can check the documentation. That's maybe better rather than pretending I know the numbers by heart. Yeah, so if you check the release notes, you have the numbers here on top. 250 software-specific EasyBlocks and 39 generic EasyBlocks. So with about 300, well, let's say 280, 90 EasyBlocks combined, we can support 3,000 different software packages. So 250 of those are for specific software. With the other 40, we can install, let's say, 2,500 other software packages. So there's lots of Python stuff in here, which is the same thing over and over and over again. You don't really care whether you're installing, let's say, H5Py or Pandas. It's just the same pip install stuff you need to do. So that's where we use a generic EasyBlock. To some extent, you can control what an EasyBlock does through what we call EasyConfig parameters. So specific values you can set, Boolean stuff, enable, disable, or keywords that you add, that you set, giving additional options for the configure command when you're doing CMake, for example. So all of that can be controlled with what's called EasyConfig parameters, which are specified in an EasyConfig file, which is explained on the next slide. And we'll see this also in the hands-on, how you can make sure what an EasyBlock supports, how you can steer it, how you can control it. Separate GitHub repository for the EasyBlocks that we have in EasyBuild. And like I said before, they're sort of a plugin to the framework. You can actually have your own set of Python modules, EasyBlocks, that you give to EasyBuild, and it will pick them up when it needs to. So we have an include EasyBlocks configuration option where you can give it a list of Python files. And whenever EasyBuild needs to install your favorite software for which you give the necessary Python file, it will pick it up and use it and run the commands that are specified in there. And this is well covered in the EasyBuild documentation as well, how to do this. What's also sometimes interesting, especially when testing changes, like if we want to support a new version of OpenFOAM, we basically take the existing EasyBlock, update it, and then use include EasyBlocks to tell EasyBuild, use this one instead rather than the one you have already. So also for testing and development, this is very helpful. Okay, an EasyConfig file is then a collection of EasyConfig parameters, so key value definitions that specify EasyBuild what to install and sometimes also how to install it, configuration options and things like this. It's really just a text file. It's not really a Python script. It's a text file, so key value. It is written in Python syntax. And deep inside the heart of EasyBuild, it's actually running that Python code, but only to define those variables. So there's no commands being run in there or something. It's just the key value definitions. An EasyConfig file, the file name of that typically ends in .eb. Sometimes that's very important. Sometimes it's not, depending on how EasyBuild picks up the EasyConfig file. I will explain this as well. Usually we follow a pattern like this, where the name of the EasyConfig file starts with the software name, then a dash software version, usually then a dash and a tool chain. There's exceptions to that. And sometimes a label at the end, what we call the version suffix, which discriminates between different configurations of that software or different dependencies that are used. Python 2, Python 3 is one example. So just by the name of the EasyConfig file, you can often already figure out quite a lot about what it's going to install. Here also a separate repository for the EasyConfig files we have. As I was clear in the release notes as well, we currently include 16,000 EasyConfig files with EasyBuild. So that's for these 3,000 software packages we support, but different versions of that, and sometimes with different compilers or different configuration options. So that's why that number is a lot bigger than the 3,000 we have here. And all of these have, at least at some point, been tested and validated to work. We don't rebuild all of these when we do a regression test for an EasyBuild release, but a big chunk of them. And definitely the more recent ones, the more recent software versions, we will retest and make sure they still work. Then an easy stack file. So this is a new concept that was introduced pretty recently. It's still an experimental feature currently. The syntax here is a bit different. It's YAML, not Python, just because that's a bit more natural. It fits well with the idea of an easy stack file. What this does, it basically describes an entire software stack that you can install with EasyBuild. It's sort of a list of EasyConfig file names in a single file, sometimes with options that you can control from the EasyBuild command line. You can put them in the easy stack file. And then if you give the easy stack file to EasyBuild, it will install that whole software stack for you in the correct order, keeping into account dependencies between these things and so on. So maybe, I don't think I have an example in here. No, we give you a quick idea of what that looks like by showing it in the documentation. So it's an experimental feature, so it's in a separate section of the documentation. It's not fully complete yet. And experimental means the behavior may change across EasyBuild releases. So it's not finalized yet. But it basically looks something like this. So this is an example where we say the easy configs we want to install in our software stack are this PyTorch one. And for this particular PyTorch installation, we want to not take the easy config file that's included with EasyBuild, but we want to pull it from an open pull or from a pull request that's available in GitHub. This is a pull request number. And we also want to make sure that debug logging is enabled for this, because that gives us more information about how the installation is being done. We want to install Hyper as well. There's no special options for. And we want to install OpenFOAM. And in this case, we want to install it in a different location for whatever reason. So if you give this easy stack file to EasyBuild, it will do those installations and all the dependencies that are necessary for it. And it will give you a full thing. So this is a sort of a new idea that we have, and we want to make sure you can control, or you can have a central place where you describe your entire software stack, rather than doing individual installations and then forgetting about what's actually there later. So that's sort of the idea. It's not finished yet, but we're working on that. Then extensions is something you'll also often hear about in EasyBuild. This is a bit of a general term. It's really a collection of ideas like Python packages, Perl modules, R libraries. So those are all sitting on top of something else. But packages is overloaded, modules is overloaded, libraries is way too generic. So we came up with our own term, extensions. So these are software packages, typically small things that are installed on top of something else. So a Python package is a very common example nowadays. NumPy is, in EasyBuild terms, an extension. R libraries that you install either with R itself or separately are extensions as well. extensions that are supported by EasyBuild can be installed in mainly 3 different ways, either standalone, so you can have a separate installation of NumPy that has its own environment module that you can load. You can install a collection of extensions together in what we call a bundle. And a common one that we use in EasyBuild is the SciPy bundle, which includes NumPy, SciPy, Pandas, and a couple of things that those require. So those are all installed in a single installation directory together. And what you can also do is add a single extension, let's say, to an existing software package. We do this with Python itself, for example. We include a couple of Python packages from PyPy along with Python itself. So you don't need to install these whenever you need them. Also Python bindings, if you have a C++ library that comes with Python bindings, we install that as an extension along with the library itself, so you don't need 2 different installations for that. Okay, then dependencies. This is a very common term as well, and I hope well understood as well. It's a software package that you need to install something else or to run something else. From a high level, there's 3 types of dependencies. There's build dependencies, stuff that you need to only install or build something. CMake is a very common example. Once you've done your configuration, you can throw CMake away and your installation will still work. Same for pip, package config. So there's lots of these build dependencies. There's runtime dependencies, Python, Perl, R. So stuff you need to actually run that software. If you're running a Python package, you need Python itself as well. And then there's something in between, which we call link time dependencies. That can be libraries, glibc, OpenBLAS, FFTW. Those are needed when you're installing the software for sure, because you need to link to them. And depending on how the installation was done, you may also need them at runtime. So if you're doing dynamic linking, the library will need to be available when you start the software. If you're doing static linking, it will not be needed. And there's something in between, which is called RPath linking, where at the time you do the installation, it remembers where the library is located. And then at runtime, you don't need to load that module for that library because it remembers the path where it is anyway. So today, we only really make the distinction between build and runtime dependencies in EasyBuild. You will not find a link time only concept, but that may change in the future. We're thinking about pulling that apart because then you basically at runtime can load less dependencies, which has a performance benefit in terms of startup and so on. So we're thinking about pulling that apart. But it's good to know the differences between these 3. Tool chains in an EasyBuild context are a shorthand for compiler tool chains. So a tool chain always has a compiler, and it's often combined with libraries for MPI, for BLAS LAPACK, so linear algebra operations, for FFT, fast Fourier transforms. So you can put these things together somehow. The things you put in a tool chain, we call them tool chain components. So there's always a compiler component. There can be an MPI component, the linear algebra component, and it's like a small puzzle that you make. And then EasyBuild can leverage that toolchain to perform the installations. A full toolchain means there's compilers for C, C++, and Fortran, the most commonly still used programming languages in scientific computing, at least the low-level ones. And then libraries for MPI, for linear algebra, and FFT. If we have all of these, we call this a full tool chain. There's also subtool chains, which are partial, so which does not have everything that's in the full tool chain. This could be only a compiler, or it could be only compiler and an MPI library, or, and that's relatively recent, only a compiler and linear algebra libraries without having MPI. So you have like a diamond kind of organization in the toolchain concept. There's also a system toolchain. So this is a concept in EasyBuild that we try to minimize. We try to use this as less as possible, but sometimes we have to. That's when we use the compilers provided by the operating system itself. For example, when we're installing our own GCC, we need a compiler to build that GCC. So we're relying on the system compiler for that, which we don't control. We don't know which version it is, so we assume it's going to work. But as soon as we can, we step away from that and we use our own compiler-only toolchain and then build our way up from that. So whenever you see system toolchain, it basically means we're either using the system compiler or we don't need any compiler at all. For example, when only unpacking a tarball, the toolchain is totally irrelevant because you're not compiling anything at all. We have two common toolchains which we defined in the EasyBuild community. The FOSS toolchain, FOSS stands for Free and Open Source Software. So it's all open source toolchain components, GCC, OpenAPI, OpenBLAS, and FFTW. So OpenBLAS for linear algebra, FFTW for FFT. And recent versions of FOSS, we also have FlexiBLAS on top. So FlexiBLAS is a very interesting wrapper library, which is like a thin layer on top of OpenBLAS or Bliss or MKL. And it allows you to at runtime switch between the library that you're going to use as a backend. So you're linking to FlexiBLAS, and you can tell FlexiBLAS when I'm running this software, please use OpenBLAS for your linear algebra routines, or use Bliss or use MKL without recompiling the software. So you compile it once, you link it with FlexiBLAS, and then you get the flexibility to use something else as a backend. We also have the Intel toolchain, which is everything Intel. Intel compilers, MPI, and MKL. So those are the two most commonly used ones in the community. More recently, and also in the user meeting, this came up. We'll also have to start paying more attention to Clang-based toolchains. So all the OneAPI, AMD compilers are all Clang-based, and we'll probably need something like this in EasyBuild as well. We already have Clang as a compiler, so you can use it in the toolchain already, but these toolchains are not very actively used in the community, and that's something that needs to change. And then modules, like I said, this is very overloaded terms. There's modules all around in Linux and in software, scientific software. In an EasyBuild context, it usually means an environment module file, so a file that you can load to make changes in your environment and give you access to an installation that's provided by EasyBuild. The most common environment modules tools is LMod, and that's also the default one that's used in EasyBuild. There's other implementations that are Tcl-based as well still, but they're not used very much, at least not in the EasyBuild community. So whenever we say module, we usually mean environment module. If we mean something else, like a Python module, then we'll quantify it like that. Or qualify it like that, sorry. Yeah, and these environment modules are automatically generated by EasyBuild for every installation it performs. So you always get an installation directory that has the actual binaries or libraries, and then a module file next to it, let's say, that gives you access to that installation. So you can just do module load and then start using that software. We'll do this as well in the hands-on. Okay, so that's a lot of terminology. So hopefully this slide will help you a bit to pulling everything together, how it all fits. So we have the EasyBuild framework, the heart of EasyBuild, that you can combine with EasyBlocks, with Python modules. If you do that, you can automatically install or perform an installation procedure of software, scientific software. It may be including extensions on top of that, Python bindings, R libraries, God knows what. When it does the installation, it uses a particular compiler toolchain, which may include MPI, linear algebra, libraries, and so on. And EasyBuild does this as specified in an easyconfig file, which specifies the software, the version, the toolchain to use, maybe configuration options, and so on. And that all these things are specified in an easyconfig, in a set of easyconfig parameters. EasyBuild will make sure that all the dependencies are in place first, and if not, it will scream at you. That includes both build and runtime dependencies. And when the installation is complete, it will generate a module file per installation. So if it has done multiple installations, you've got multiple module files that give you access to that software. And then an easy stack file, at least if you're willing to use it as an experimental feature, can be used to specify a whole collection of software at once, and then EasyBuild will do all those installations that are needed to get all of that working. Any questions on this? This is a lot of terminology, I know. We'll be repeating this, and whenever we need to clarify, we'll happy to do that. There's a question. Can you pass the mic? Yeah. There's no amplification. It's just for the recording. Let's make sure that works. No, are you unmuted in the Zoom? No.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was interested in the easy stack option. I'm assuming that if the module, I mean, if anything changes, like the easy config file or the extensions, the software will be rebuilt, and if nothing changes, it doesn't get rebuilt. Is there some kind of logic?
Currently, that's not the case.
Okay.
So what an easy stack file specifies is what should be installed. As soon as EasyBuild sees the module file that corresponds to that, the environment module file, it'll say that thing is there, and they won't redo it.
Okay.
Now, what you could do in an easy stack file is you could add the rebuild option for the particular thing, and then every time you use that easy stack file, it will rebuild all the time. Yeah, but it will redo it always. Yeah. So maybe we could add some detection in there. That could be a good idea, where you somehow keep track of what the easy config file looked like when it was installed, and if that changes, you do a rebuild or an optional rebuild. That could be possible. Yeah.
I guess even the easy blocks definition, if that file changed, then you
well, there it gets complex, right? Because you have an easy config file that uses an easy block, but easy blocks stack on top of each other. So if you use a Python package easy block, that actually derives from something else. If that other thing changes, it could also affect the installation. So you need to keep track of everything. Okay. So how deep you want to make that is a bit,
yeah. I was just interested in that. Thank you.
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. Any other questions before we continue? Okay. Let's see how we're doing on time. I have to do some time math in my head. Okay, we're running behind a little bit. So we'll continue. So now we're getting into the hands-on part as well. We'll have half an hour essentially to explain you how to install and configure EasyBuild, and then also do that in the prepared environment. So let me walk you through that quickly, and then we can all do that hands-on before we move on. So to install EasyBuild or to get EasyBuild running, you need three things. You need Linux as an operating system. macOS works to some extent, but you won't get very far when actually doing installations. But to play around with the EB command or the Python code that works on the Mac, I've developed it on the Mac all the time. But for actual builds, you need Linux. You'll need Python. Python 3.6 is highly recommended because in EasyBuild 5, that will be the only version we support. And you'll need an environment modules tool. We generally recommend Elmod. So if we look at our interactive environment, make sure that's a bit bigger. So we have Wacker Linux. That's okay. We have Python available, but as Python 3, and this is a Python 3.6. And if we check the module command, we have Elmod available there as well. So all three requirements are met in the prepared environment. Then to install EasyBuild, there's different options, different ways of doing it. EasyBuild is published via PyPy, so it's a standard Python tool. You can just pip install it like any other Python tool, that works. Depending on whether you want it a system-wide installation or an installation only for the user, you can install it in a virtual environment if you're familiar with that. So all of that stuff works. You can also install EasyBuild as a module, as an environment module, using EasyBuild itself. So we have like a bootstrap procedure documented where you first do a pip install EasyBuild in a temporary location, then use that EasyBuild installation to install EasyBuild. It gives you a module, and from that point, you can just use EasyBuild to install other stuff. You can also do a development setup where you're playing with, let's say, the bleeding edge version of EasyBuild. You clone the repositories, you update the path and Python path environment variables, and then you're playing with the development version of EasyBuild. That's not recommended, of course. It may be a bit unstable, or you may run into some surprises there. But if you want to, that's easy to do. All three ways are documented in the tutorial website. So if you go to the installation section here, you'll see method 1 using pip. So this is just pip install with some options and some remarks on pip 3 or updating your path and Python path. Method 2 is the bootstrap procedure, where you end up installing EasyBuild with EasyBuild and getting a module for it. And method 3 is the development setup, where you can essentially copy paste what's here, and then you have the development version running. Now we won't do all three hands-on, because that may be a bit confusing, but if you want to, you can try any of these three. We'll go with method 2, the bootstrap procedure, because that gives a bit of give a bit of experience with all three methods to some extent, and it's going to be most useful in the hands-on prepared environment as well. So that's what's also in the slide. So installing EasyBuild as a module, that's the recommended approach. That's method 2, which is basically 3 steps. So step 1 is you use pip to do the installation. We'll do it in a temporary directory, which we later can remove. So this is only to get an EasyBuild that we can use to install EasyBuild with. So we'll set up a temporary directory that we can later remove. We'll do a pip install of EasyBuild in that directory. Because this is a non-standard location, we'll need to update our environment to make sure that this EasyBuild installation is visible. And we're also going to make very sure that EasyBuild uses Python 3. Come on. Yeah, that uses Python 3 for running. There's a small mistake in here. This should be Python 3.6, not 3.9, because we're running Python 3.6 in a prepared environment. So if I do this step by step, and here, yeah, if you copy paste this, so if you hover over this, oh no, it's not working here. Why not? Yeah, anyway, this is easy to copy paste. So we'll start with this, picking a temporary directory and doing the installation in there. So that's running it in the temporary directory. You will see it will pull in 3 Python packages. And why does this look a bit weird? Yeah, that looks better. It will be pulling in 3 Python packages from PyPy, Framework, EasyBlocks, EasyConfigs, and basically put them all in the same place. And remember, some of this, especially the EasyConfigs package, includes lots of small files, right? It includes 16,000 EasyConfig files. If you're doing this in a temporary directory, it will be okay. If you're doing this in a fast share, it may take a while before the installation completes, and we'll actually see this. So it's doing that installation. That means in here, in temp user, I have an EB temp directory. I have a bin in there that has the EB command and some other junk. It has a lib directory with the lib Python 6 and the side packages in there, which has a bunch of EasyBuild packages installed. So that looks good. To actually start running this, we'll need to update our environment. So the EB command is available. So the EasyBuild Python packages are available to Python. So that's Python path. And to specify that EasyBuild wants to run with Python 3 or Python 3.6 in this case. Let me make sure this guy is available. Yep, okay. I can copy paste this. Put it in here. This just gives us access to our temporary EasyBuild. Like this. We can run it. -- version. It complains it cannot find a Python command. All right. We're already debugging stuff. That's good. Let's see why it's thinking. It's not picking up this one for some reason. Okay, it is, but it says it cannot import. EasyBuild. Which means this guy is not correct. Oh yeah, it didn't. Ah, okay. It didn't complete the library directory here for some reason. So it should be like this. Just remove that star. This guy in here. I'm a bit confused why that doesn't work, but it doesn't seem to be working. So make sure the Python path is correct. Like this. Which corresponds to this directory. And then the eb-dash version should work. Yeah, I'll unset the verbose again. Yeah, so this is what you should be seeing if it works. So please try this. Step 1 of method 2 in the site and make sure eb-dash version is working for you. Not able to log in? Nobody? All right. I'm hoping Alan is around. So I'm logged in. It's working for me. So what kind of issues are you seeing? Yeah, but that's because I have an SSH key. If you just use
Kenneth, can you hear me?
Alan?
Yeah, it's probably a few people probably got their password wrong, and the IP has probably been blocked now on SSH. I need to have to remember how to unblock it. Give me a minute.
So Alan is looking into it. It seems like some people got their password wrong, and that's why their IP got blocked automatically on the login node. So he's looking into fixing that. The alternative is, of course, that you go through the Jupyter Hub interface. That should work.
Yeah, that will still work.
So if the SSH doesn't work for now, maybe use the Jupyter Hub interface. Yeah, you pick the username when requesting the account. Yeah. Yeah. Let me show this for everyone. So if there's some issues with SSH, for now we can use this. We won't be doing heavy installs. So you use the login name and the password that you picked. That should give you a form like this. No? What are you using as a username? The one you picked yourself? Yep. And that's not working. Nope. Alan, are you hearing this? Counting on you here.
Yeah, I'm hearing it.
So also the form is telling people it's not working.
So what's it saying exactly?
It says invalid username or password.
Are you sure that the username and password, has anyone got it to work?
Is anyone logged in through the form? No, it looks like that's a no. Even Jasper, it's also not working.
So I think look, maybe it's a group issue. It shouldn't be, but
I think chances are low that everybody's getting their password wrong.
Yeah.
So it must be something else.
IPA, no.
So while Alan is looking into that, let me continue with the demo, or we'll lose too much time. So let's assume part 1 worked. Then you're basically here. You have a temporary installation of EasyBuild, and you can run eb-version, and it gives you an answer. That's part 1. Here, step 1. This is done. We can then go to step 2. So we have EasyBuild, and EasyBuild knows how to install EasyBuild. That's very useful. We don't even need to tell it the version. It can figure out the latest version that's available of itself automatically. So if you do install EB latest EB release, it will figure out the latest version of EasyBuild and do that installation. Then we can tell it where it should be doing the installation using the prefix option. And in this case, we're going to use our home directory /EasyBuild. That's easy to remember. So once step 1 is done, we can do step 2. Like this. And this may take a while because our home directory is on NFS and there's lots of small files involved. So this actually gives you some time to think as well what's going on. Let me explain this a little bit.
They can try it again, Kenneth. Maybe it should work now.
Yeah, so it should be working now. Alan says he fixed something.
I hope.
You can try to look. Yeah, somebody already said it worked, so that looks like it. That's better. So while this guy is going on, let me explain you what's going on. So we gave EasyBuild the instruction to figure out its own latest version. It did that, and it found an easyconfig file for that. It's pulling that from GitHub essentially. Then it's parsing this easyconfig file. That means it knows what to install, which version, and how. And it's now starting to do that. So it's unpacking the tarballs. It has downloaded the stuff it needs in a couple of seconds, and then it continues with the installation. We'll go through what all of this means. So the installation is done in several steps. We can get some more details on this because this doesn't really tell you much. We'll see all of that. So while that's going, maybe try to do step 1, step 2 of that bootstrap procedure. So you should be seeing output like this if you're running step 2. And if there's any questions, just shout. Yeah, first you have to do step 1. Yeah, so you need your temporary installation of EasyBuild first, because EasyBuild is not installed system-wide at all in the prepared environment, and that's done on purpose.
Can you tell me what's the IP address in the room there?
The IP address in the room.
I have two that are banned, so I just want to know which one it is.
Yeah, so some people will be on eduroam, some people will be on a different Wi-Fi. Yeah, so York just created an account request and he's on eduroam. So maybe that tells you an IP address as well. I'm not sure.
No, it doesn't. No.
So for me, it's 146.179.
No, it's not on the banned list. Okay.
Yeah, that's eduroam. So
try so maybe after adding to the group, the SSH might work because it's not on the banned list.
Yeah. Okay. So people can also retry the SSH, and I think that was working in the back. Yeah, SSH is working. Is there somebody still stuck, not able to log in at all? No. Okay. So it looks like everyone has a way of accessing the environment. Yeah. In the meantime, this is completing the installation. It takes a bit long now. 2 minutes is not extreme, but it's mostly because the NFS, so the file system is a bit slow. And that's actually going to be important in later installations as well. That's an important attention point, also in general. So we'll give people the time to sort that out and make sure you're getting a view like this that runs to completion. Is somebody already doing step 2 and that's going on? Running? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah, no need to rush, take your time. So we explicitly have time included in the agenda for hands-on. So Yeah, that looks a bit confusing, but it's going to finish eventually. I'm not sure why it does that, but yeah, see, it's completing it. So no, it's not wget. It's something. If you increase the font, you need to sometimes do a reset of this terminal. Yeah.
Jorg's account is approved in case he's waiting.
Sorry, Alan?
Jorg's account is improved in case he's waiting.
Your account is approved as well. Okay, so eventually you should see the installation complete like it did here. For me, it did in 3.5 minutes. It should be similar for you, but if there's 10 people doing the installation, the NFS will be a bit more sluggish, of course, so give it time. Yeah, so the 3.9 is wrong. You need to change that to 3.6. That's why it's not picking it up. Yeah, that's a mistake in the slides. We'll fix that. Yeah, so if you do the dash version again, yeah, now it's happy. Yeah. At least it's giving you a proper error, right? Another, it's giving you some hint to what may be wrong. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyone completed step 2? Yeah. You got a completed installation. Yeah, here as well. Here it's running. You're getting an error in step 3. Okay, we'll get to that. Yeah. Yeah. And it's good if you follow the prefix that's in that command. Let me bring it up again. The home/EasyBuild. Try to stick to that because we'll be using that throughout the other hands-on parts as well. So this part here is important. This will be the location where we also install other software next to EasyBuild. So from this point on, EasyBuild is just another software package that we install. You can give EasyBuild to users that way as well. So how many have completed step 2 or have it at least running? Running, yeah, completed, running. Okay. So once it's running, it should complete to success and don't expect any issues there. Let's take a look at step 3. So this looks like we have EasyBuild installed, but how do we now access it, right? If we check which EB, we're still getting our temporary installation. I'm actually now gonna remove it. Whether you do that yourself, it doesn't really matter, but I want to make sure I'm breaking the temporary installation. I don't want to use that at all. So now EB is no longer there intentionally. And we want to use this installation in our home directory. For this, we need to make sure that our environment module that comes with the EasyBuild installation can be loaded. If we check with module avail, there's not much available at all. Not even module path is set. So Elmod says, I don't have any modules that you can load at all. So we need to add the location where the modules are being generated by EasyBuild to the module path. There's a subdirectory in here, along with the software directory. Those are the 2 main ones we care about for now. So the software directory has the actual EasyBuild installation 471. The modules directory has an EasyBuild subdirectory and a file in there, a .lua file. That's our actual module file. That's the one we want to load. So what we should do now is, let me show you what effect this will have. So we want to do this. So if I check the module path, this is how LMOD knows where module files are. This is empty. If I tell LMOD, here's a directory with module files that you should be able to load, we can do that with the module use command. And if we then run module avail again, it will see the EasyBuild module. So who here is familiar with environment modules in general? Module use, module load, module list. Who is not? Okay, that's good. So with the module use, we can add it to the module path. We could also do export module path equals. That's really just the same thing, but with module use, it's a bit more controlled. And once we load that EasyBuild module, EasyBuild is available and it should be working as well. So please make sure you can load that module without seeing any errors. And if you do which EB, you should be a path in your home directory, as shown there. And that basically shows that you've completed the bootstrap procedure. You have an EasyBuild in your home directory and it works. So what I'll do here is I'll give you a green sticker. If you've completed the exercise, put the sticker on the corner of your laptop. And if not, just put it next to your keyboard. That tells me how far everyone is. If you've completed this, put the sticker here on the corner. And if not, put it next to your keyboard. So if it's not up, you haven't completed the exercise. That way I don't need to ask all the time. That's a trick I learned from software carpentry and it works really well. Yeah. If you've completed the exercise, put the sticker on the top of the laptop and then I know it's working. I'll give you a red one too. If you're stuck, totally stuck, hopelessly stuck, or maybe if I'm going way too fast, that's a signal as well. Okay, see green guys popping up. That's good. Okay. So for the people who haven't completed it yet, do you need help? If you do, raise your hand or use the red sticker. There's a small section on the tutorial website. I think it's also in the slides. Yeah, on verifying the installation. You've seen that I usually do an EB-dash version. If that works, you should be fine. That means EasyBuild is essentially working. You can check the help output as well. That's going to be really long. It gives you all the configuration options. You can check what the current EasyBuild configuration is. We'll get to that in the next part. And you can also do the show system info that will let EasyBuild report what it knows about your system, how many cores, what type of CPU, operating system, Python version. So that gives you a nice summary as well. Yep. Here it's also completing, good. Yeah, so I see people use a nice trick that's maybe good to highlight as well. That's something I really like about LMOD. It's a very small aspect, but I like it a lot. So you can do module list to see what's loaded. You can also just type ML, which is short for module list. And ML is nice because ML can also be used to load modules. You just do ML and the name of a module, it's module load, not module list. And like module is very easy to mistype, it's way too long. So I like ML a lot better. It's like a lucky shot that it both starts with an L. All green, all right, good. Yeah. So there's a small part on updating EasyBuild as well. We currently have the latest version of EasyBuild. There's nothing much to update, but just to give you an idea of how that could be done, depending on how you did the installation, there's different procedures. If you did the installation with pip, your final installation with pip, you can do pip install -- upgrade. That's an in-place update of EasyBuild. So then you lose the previous EasyBuild version. If you used EasyBuild, if you have EasyBuild already and you just want to get the latest version as a module, you just run the same command that we did in step 2. So if you're here on the mailing list or in Slack or somebody tells you there's a new EasyBuild version, you can do install latest EB release and it will install the latest version next to the current one. So that's not an in-place update. You'll get a new installation and an additional module. So I can actually show this. Don't want to make it too slow. So if I do this right now, I have EasyBuild available. I can do install latest EB release again. But we already have it, and EasyBuild will just say, oh, it's already there. Why are you trying to install it again? Well, yes, you do. Well, you do. Yeah, so depends. Let me show you. Indeed, if you do this, you're going to get the same answer because the module is available. Because it's in here and EasyBuild sees it. So it says, it's already there, I'm not going to install it again. But if it's not, let me unload the module first. Unsend module path. If I now do this, I'm not specifying a prefix. That means EasyBuild will use the default prefix, which is, and that's actually the part, yeah, I lost EasyBuild now, of course, but if you do a show config, if you have EasyBuild working, it will show you what its default configuration is. And that's to install stuff in a .local, so a hidden directory in your home directory, which is a bit annoying. That's some kind of a standard, but it's a bit stupid. So if you don't have an EasyBuild module available and you do EB install latest release, I threw away my temporary one, so I'm causing trouble. It would do it in the default installation location. And that's why exactly why we did the prefix. Yeah. No. So yeah, if EasyBuild sees a module, it doesn't care where it is. If it sees a module, it will say, this thing is already installed. I'm not going to do it again. You can override this, of course. You can force it to redo the installation if you want to. Okay, so important difference here with the pip install upgrade, you're doing an in-place update of the EasyBuild package you have installed with pip. If you're doing an EasyBuild installation, EB install latest EB release, you're either getting the latest version, which you already have, or it will do a new installation next to it. So you will not lose your existing EasyBuild version. You can flip between the 2 versions or 3 versions. This has an old version here, ignore that, but you get the idea. Okay. So the next important step after installation is configuration. So the default configuration of EasyBuild, you can see if you run show config. It should be the same for everyone except for your username, of course. So this tells you the most important configuration options that EasyBuild has: the location of the build directories, the location where EasyBuild will install stuff, install path, the location where EasyBuild will look for EasyConfig files, that's the robot paths. The location where EasyBuild will look for and download source tarballs if it has to, that's the source path. The container path, ignore that one, that's not that important. And the repository path is where EasyBuild stores EasyConfig files that are installed already. So it will copy them to there. That's like an archive of what you have installed. Now, this default configuration doesn't make a lot of sense, right? A hidden directory, like what the hell? But that's some kind of standard in Linux, so EasyBuild follows that standard. Now, let's take a look at how we can reconfigure EasyBuild to be a bit more different. So the .local location is not really recommended, so you should reconfigure. Where do you want to install software? Where do you want to keep source tarballs? And where do you want to put build directories? So that's where EasyBuild compiles stuff. That could be pretty IO intensive. C++ software can involve lots of small C++ code files that the compiler needs to compile. And you better make sure you do it on a file system that's well suited for that. So something with SSDs or something like this. Definitely not a parallel file system. That will not work well. You'll run into strange installation issues. And we'll show you how to reconfigure. So the most important ones, some of these are already mentioned. Show config will always show the important ones, the ones that really matter. Others that are important are the modules tool that will be used. By default, it will be looking for lmod, and it will use the Lua syntax for modules. If you want to reconfigure that, there's a configuration option for this. The search part for EasyConfig files, you can also change the module naming scheme if you want to, and we'll get to that later today. And all the ones marked with an asterisk can actually be controlled with a single configuration setting --prefix, which is the one we were using before. So if you specify --prefix, you're changing the default for install path, source path, build path, and repository path all at once. But you also have separate options. If you want to put these things in different locations, you can as well. So we used prefix before. We give it home EasyBuild. That means everything goes in here. Modules, software, sources, build directories, which have been cleaned up because the installation has been completed, and the archive of EasyConfig files that was used to do installations. Sources are here, nicely organized in subdirectories. So 3 tarballs for EasyBuild 471. We have the modules, which we already showed, and the actual software installation directory for this version is there as well. So whether you want things in the same place or not is up to you. You can fully control this. So all of this was done with a single --prefix option. Controls the location of all these things at once. Lots of configuration options, about 270 or 75 even today. So lots of different aspects of EasyBuild. To configure EasyBuild, there's different ways of doing that. There's configuration files, there's environment variables, and there's command line options. There's 3 levels of configuration, and one overrides the other. So if you use a configuration file, that will be used. If you use an environment variable to set the same configuration setting as I set in a configuration file, the environment variable wins. And then the same thing for the command line option, that always wins regardless of something else. And I think that sort of makes sense. Oh, and you can also, every configuration option or setting you see in --help, you can set on each of these 3 levels, and there's no exceptions. And that can lead to weird situations. Let me show you one thing you should never do. So please don't do this, because you will get very confused. You can say EasyBuild version equals 1. And if you then run eb-help, it will print the version. Like, what the hell is going on? Well, setting this is the same as doing this. And it just wins. So it will override the well, not override the --help, but it will process the version first before it even considers doing --help. So you're getting the help output, the version output. Even when you try to install something, it won't do much. It will just keep on printing the version. So be careful if you set this, because it's the equivalent of doing version. That's a confusing one, and that's probably one we'll start printing a warning for, because if you don't know what's going on, and it's not that weird to have this set, you need to be a bit careful. But this shows there's absolutely no exceptions. Every configuration setting can be controlled via an environment variable as well. That's good, but yeah, you can shoot yourself in the foot as well. Configuration files are in the standard ini format, key value. So the documentation is the best part here to see how this is done. We won't be using this. We'll use environment variables, which is a bit more common, I think, to configure EasyBuild. If you want to get a starting point to create a configuration file, you can use the config help option. So let me show you what that looks like, at least the first couple of lines of that. Let's make it 20. So this gives you a template configuration file with everything commented out, and it will show you the defaults as well. So for many things, there's no suitable default here, but if we grab for, let's say, modules, let's see. Yeah, all of these are empty. Why are they all empty? Let's see if I can find something that's not empty. Yeah, no, not really. Oh, whatever. What this gives you is all the configuration options with a line of comment on top that says what the default is and everything commented out. So you can remove the hash in front of debug and set debug equals 1. Then you're enabling debug mode. And you can put this configuration file in one of the locations that EasyBuild considers. The best way of figuring out what it considers is by asking it. So this will give you locations, and it says in your home directory, I'm considering this path, but it's not there. In the system, I'm considering this path, which you can also control with an xtg environment variable, which is not there. So there's no configuration files found in this case. If I do, let's say, check. I never use configuration files, to be honest. So I need to do mkdir. One of the locations it's considers is .config EasyBuild, and a config file in there. Yeah, config.cfg main debug equals 1. So that's a very minimal configuration file, which I've stored in here. If I do show default config files, it will now say this is found. And if you do show config, it will also tell you that debug is now enabled. And it even tells you at which level it's enabled. So it's F for file, configuration file. So there's lots of ways to configure EasyBuild: configuration files, environment file, command line options. I could do, let's say, enable trace on the command line. And even when doing show config, it will say, now tracing is enabled with a C for command line. You can always query where stuff is configured and find it back. I'll remove the file again. I want to make sure I'm using the default configuration. So configuration files is one option. Now, and this is a bit confusing initially, configuration files and EasyConfig files are two totally different things, right? That's important to realize. An EasyBuild configuration file gives configuration settings for EasyBuild as a whole, for all installations it does. An EasyConfig file is a file that tells EasyBuild to install a particular software package and a version and a toolchain with some options to that and so on. So these are totally disjunct ideas. And this is also mentioned in, you go back to the tutorial website, back to the overview, configuration part. This is also mentioned here somewhere. Configuration files. Yeah, so these things are very different. So if you want to read up on that and understand it, this is the part we should be looking at. Environment variables are, to me at least, way more useful. You can put them in a startup script in your Bash RC. You can put them in a script you can source. They're a bit more dynamic. Depending on which system you're logged into, you can dynamically set these things. So that's a bit easier. They always start with EasyBuild _ all capitals, and they correspond with an EasyBuild configuration setting. For example, if you want to control the module syntax, you can set EasyBuild _module _syntax. If you make a silly mistake, EasyBuild will scream at you. If you say EasyBuild example equals 1, and then you do whatever, -- version, it's going to tell you, I don't know what example is. It's not a configuration option, so you made a typo, right? So you cannot accidentally misconfigure or make a silly typo that's not being, that the configuration is not being picked up. It will scream at you. To show you the example, module syntax equals tickle. And if we then do show config, it will pick it up and show you that it's set in the environment, so E for environment. Yeah, so this is how I always configure EasyBuild myself. Then also on the command line, you can specify configuration settings. We already did. -- prefix is a configuration option. We specified it on the command line, and if you specify it there, it always wins, regardless of where stuff may be configured somewhere else. So this gives you full control. If you want to make very sure, use the command line option, and then it will be definitely what you expect it to be. For inspecting the configuration, the currently active configuration, you can use show config. This will give you a zoomed in view of the most important settings like install path, build path, source path, and whatever you have changed that doesn't agree with the default. So that's why this one pops up here, because usually it's Lua and now it's Tickle. So that's how you know. If you want to get the full configuration, so everything you can set, so what's currently active, you can do show full config. This will spit out all 275 options and tell you what all they are. For example, if you do modules tool here, this will tell us our current modules tool is lmod, and that's the default. You get a D for default for everything. And this gives you a lot of different options. So you can very easily query what your current active EasyBuild configuration is. Yeah, this gives you some examples. Now the recommendation for the rest of the hands-on is this. So we'll keep using our home EasyBuild as the prefix, the location of software, sources, everything. We'll override the location of the build path. So we'll set build path separately to a temporary directory. That's because our home directory is NFS, and when we will be building C++ stuff, we may get in trouble if we use NFS as a build directory. That's just not a good idea. You should use a local directory always for the build path. That's a very recommendation, a very good recommendation. And we'll also make sure this is outside of the EasyBuild configuration, but we'll make sure that our that the modules that we have prepared, so there are modules in /EasyBuild. So this is outside of your home directory. There's just a bunch of stuff we pre-installed. These should be visible to EasyBuild. So these should be in your module path. So you should be doing a module use on that. And then echo module path. You should have both these locations in your module path. This is mainly to avoid that everyone will have to install GCC from source, because that will take hours. We don't want to do that during the tutorial, and that we have a tool chain to play with. So these will be coming from the /EasyBuild shared software stack, essentially. So very similar to how you'll be providing a shared software stack for your researchers on your cluster. Also here we have something small available. So you do a module use on /EasyBuild, which is also mentioned here on the slide. This is important. If you then do a module avail, you should be seeing a bunch of modules, and we'll be using some of these in the hands-on as well. And EasyBuild wise, make sure the prefix is set to home EasyBuild, make sure the build path is set to /temp, and please make it /temp/user, or you'll be stepping on each other's toes. You're all working on the same login node, so make sure it's a unique directory to you. Okay. Is that clear for everyone? Any questions on installation or configuration of EasyBuild? So we're now very close to lunchtime. I think lunch is being served right now. I propose, so we're running behind a little bit already. That's not really totally unexpected. I'll go through the basic usage of EasyBuild. That's pretty short. I think we can do it in 10-15 minutes. And then after the lunch break, we can really get started seriously and start installing software with EasyBuild. Because that's where we will be spending a bit more time on hands-on, and that's of course very important. That's what EasyBuild is all about. So let me cover the basic usage. When you're running EasyBuild, you're always using the EB command. Usually, you can do a Python script as well, but that's already quite advanced. And what you typically do is you give names of easyconfig files to the EB command that correspond with stuff to install. If dependencies are missing, you'll have to explicitly tell EasyBuild to install those missing dependencies with the --robot or -r option. R, recursive, robot, sort of the same thing. Also, when the toolchain is not installed yet, that's just another dependency in some sense. So EasyBuild will install that first and then continue with the dependencies that are listed. So the typical workflow when using EasyBuild is you figure out which easyconfig file you want to install, what the name of that is. Maybe you inspect that easyconfig file, so take a look what's in there, which options are specified in there. Then you probably want to check if there are any missing dependencies in your current software stack. Because if you made the wrong choice, you may be installing 100 things while you're expecting to install one single thing. It's just good to make sure that you're not overlooking something. If you want to zoom in on the installation procedure that EasyBuild will do, you can in a matter of seconds. You can quickly scroll to that and see if there's anything unexpected in there. It's usually a good idea to check what your active EasyBuild configuration is. So with show config, make sure that things will be installed in the right place before hitting enter and going for lunch. And then actually make EasyBuild do the installation. And then you have time for some coffee or maybe checking your emails. So to specify which easyconfigs, there's a number of ways. Usually you specify the name or the location of easyconfig files to the EB command. Or if you're willing to use the experimental option, you can use an easy stack file as well. For now, we won't be doing that. We'll be using the pretty standard way of using easyconfig files. The file names of easyconfig files, matter only when EasyBuild needs to find them themselves. So for example, if you're installing something, let's use NumPy as an example, you give EasyBuild the name of the the NumPy EasyConfig file you want to install. That could be numpy.eb or numpy.txt. EasyBuild doesn't care. But when there's a dependency in there that EasyBuild needs to find, for example, Python 3.9 installed with a particular toolchain, EasyBuild will look for the matching EasyConfig file for that based on the file name of the EasyConfig. So that one has to be correctly named, python-version-toolchain.eb. So EasyBuild will not scan your file system and open all files and try to figure out if that's what it needs. It needs to do that name-based, or things will be way too slow. So usually when you're directly specifying the EasyConfig files on the EB command, name doesn't matter. When EasyBuild needs to find them, name does matter. So that's a bit of a balance. And with eb-search, you can look through all the EasyConfig files that EasyBuild knows about. So again, going to our configuration, this path is where EasyBuild will be looking for EasyConfig files. If you do eb-search and let's say TensorFlow 2.7, is that a TensorFlow version? Yes. So EasyBuild knows about several EasyConfig files to install TensorFlow. It's also finding some patch files related to that. And you can see all of these are in this path. If you don't like this long output, you can do EB minus capital S. And this gives you a slightly shorter view, so not these very long paths, but a bit zoomed in. That's maybe more useful. Then if you want to figure out what that EasyConfig file looks like, so maybe you want to be careful and not blindly trust EasyBuild, or at least check ahead of time a bit what things will be like. Let's use the example from the slide. You can use the show EC option to the EB command, that's show EasyConfig. And let's pipe that through less because this is going to be a bit of text. So EasyBuild will go ahead and find that EasyConfig file. It found it here, and then it's showing you what's in there. So this tells us it looks like it's a bundle of Python packages. So that's that EasyBuild that will be used. This version of TensorFlow, this tool chain, these build dependencies, these dependencies. So there's a whole lot going on here. So all of these will either need to be there or need to be installed. And if we scroll down, there's a bunch of extensions as well. So this looks like lots of stuff that's going on. So you can take a quick look at that if you want to see if there's anything unexpected in here. Lots of patch files that will be applied as well to fix some problems that we've run into and so on. So show EC can at least give you some idea of what EasyBuild will be using for the installation. You can do a dry run. So --dry run or minus capital D. Let's do this for SAM tools. Okay, this gives you an output like this. So this gives you an overview of the whole software stack that needs to be installed to be able to install SAM tools. So all of them should be marked with an X if you've configured EasyBuild correctly. If it can find the modules in /EasyBuild/modules, these should all be marked as an X because we've pre-installed them for you. And the only one that's really missing is SAM tools itself, which is not marked as an X yet. So that gives you an overview of the whole thing that should be installed. That's a lot of stuff. For SAM tools, it's like, let's say, a dozen of things. For TensorFlow, I can show this as well. It's going to be a lot longer. Also, mainly because we don't have this toolchain installed. So this is going to be a long list. Takes a while to figure that out. It's checking also for all the installations. Is a module there? Is a module there? There's a module there. And that's a no for pretty much everything here. And well, there's some exceptions, but most of this stuff is totally missing. So this, if you would install this, this will take a while. So it's good to always check on that and make sure you're not overlooking something. Maybe a bit more sensible is using --missing or --M. This will only tell you what is missing and not what is already there. So that's a way shorter view, and that's probably what you mostly care about. So to install the SPI tables, easy config, we need 3 things, including PyTables itself. So there's 2 dependencies missing essentially. Everything else out of the 96 things, including toolchain, Python, dependencies of Python, is already there. So that's a very good one. And that was only added, well, it's been there now for a while, but it took us years to realize we needed an option like this. What you can also do next to looking at the easyconfig file is asking EasyBuild what would be done when doing the actual installation. So we have what we call an extended dry run, or dash small x for short, which tells you basically the whole installation procedure that EasyBuild would do without it actually doing anything. It will just produce text. So this is very quick. This is very good when you're playing with an easy block and you want to make sure that whatever you're changing in the easy block is actually happening. You can use -x, or if you want to open up the black box that some people think EasyBuild is, if you want to get a deeper understanding of what it would be doing, you can use this as well. So here, there's an example of this also in the tutorial website. It's there. But let's run this interactively. So we're asking EasyBuild, if you would be installing Boost, what would you be doing? Let's pipe this through less because this will be a lot of text. So this takes a couple of seconds. EasyBuild is now actually running the easy block and querying it. Okay, which command will you be running in which location? What does that mean? All of this. So this produces some kind of report, and it's telling you all of this is dry run. So I will be downloading the sources from here. And if I do, I will put it in here because your current EasyBuild configuration, I didn't actually configure it correctly. Let me do that first. So I didn't do these 2 guys. I should have. Or I'll shoot myself in the foot later. See, so you can already see, oh, wait, it's going to download stuff to the wrong place. I don't want that. So fix that issue and try it again. And now it should be showing the correct source path. In here, that looks better. So it says, I will be downloading this tarball from here because it's not there yet. And then it's going through the steps that that EasyBuild always performs for installations. It's also going to say, if I find that tarball, I expect it to have this checksum. If not, something is very wrong, corrupt tarball or something malicious is going on. I will unpack the tarball. I do that from this directory. I will load the module for the toolchain and all the dependencies. And if I do that, I can already tell that this should give me this list of stuff that's installed. Here it's simulating it for these 2 because these 2 are not installed yet, so it doesn't really know. I will set up the build environment, which means setting all these environment variables. So you can see all the details here, which compiler flags will be used for the installation. That's very good to know. Dropping down a bit. Here, it's actually running into a problem. And this is something that can happen when using -x. Sometimes an easy block assumes that like a file will be there, or it knows the output of a command that was actually run. But when using -x, it's not actually doing anything. So here it says, oh, I expect a file to be there. It's not there. What the hell is going on? So this step fails. This is not really giving us useful information. But -x is robust against that. So even though something went wrong here during the dry run, it still goes ahead and continues and does what it can do to complete the report. This gives us an overview of the actual installation command that will be run for Boost. And you can tell why you don't want to figure this out manually, right? All these options, all these paths, it's automatically figuring out there will be 16 cores. It will be using all those cores. When it completes the installation, it will expect these things to be there. If not, something went very wrong. And it actually also shows you the module file that would be generated if the installation is complete. So you can also have a look at that and see what is in there, and if there's something wrong in there. Maybe the description, you're not happy with that, you want to tweak that. So you can do all of this ahead of time without EasyBuild actually doing anything on your file system. So that's very useful. Maybe you don't always want to do the -x, but if you want to, you definitely can. Yeah, so this zooms in a bit of the important parts. Okay, so maybe before we walk out for lunch, or yeah, I guess you can grab lunch and take it to the table, that's okay. Maybe try to run these example commands of -x and -m and -d and show EC to make sure they're working on your environment. Especially with the -D, pay attention to these x's. If they are not there, then you're not having the modules visible that we have centrally installed. That's important, otherwise you will be rebuilding GCC from scratch, and that's not something we'll have time for today. So make sure that you're seeing output like this. Also, with the missing, you should see 3 out of 96. If you see something else, then something's wrong. So give that a quick try, and then we'll go for lunch and continue with actually installing stuff with EasyBuild in the next part. Do we have any questions on that? No? Okay, then I'll stop the recording for now while we're having lunch.